Quintin Smith of Shut Up and Sit Down, aka the best channel on YouTube, described deck building as the Italian food of board gaming, and I can see what he means by that. In my own words now, it's something that's easy to get started, it's always satisfying, and ultimately, everybody loves pizza. Deck building is everywhere in board gaming now because the satisfaction of grabbing cool new cards and the excitement of drawing from your deck and hoping for the perfect card to show up are great additions to a game that are just inherent to the mechanic. Ever since the original deck builder Dominion, it has spread everywhere, including into indie video games like the magnificent Slay the Spire. But if I wanted to demonstrate deck building, there is only one game I would use. If deck building is Italian food, then this game is pasta with tomato sauce. What it might lack in flair, it more than makes up for in its simplicity, dependability, and satisfaction. And that game is... it's Star Realms. It's in the title. Star Realms is a quick, competitive 1 vs 1 card game by White Wizard Games about building a powerful space armada to defeat your opponent. One big tick in Star Realms' favour is the simplicity of its rules, and it's a game where the cliché, easy to learn, hard to master, definitely applies. So let's quickly go over how to play Star Realms. Each player starts with an identical hand of 10 cards containing 8 scouts and 2 vipers, and both players have 50 authority, which is your health. Every turn you draw 5 cards from the top of your deck for you to play, and when you've drawn cards into your hand you can play them in any order you like. When you play a card, you gain the resource or use the ability listed on the card. The 3 resources are Trade, which you use to buy cards for your deck, Combat, which you use to directly attack your opponent's authority or destroy their bases, and Authority, which increases your own authority. The abilities are self-explanatory, such as Draw a card, which lets you draw an extra card into your hand that turn. Between you and the other player is a row of 5 cards called the Trade Row, and these are the cards that you can buy on your turn, provided that you have enough trade to pay the cost shown in the top right. The cheapest cards cost a single trade, while the most expensive and powerful cost a whopping 8. Once you've bought a few cards from the Trade Row, this is where Star Realms gets a little more interesting, because while your starting Scouts and Vipers have boring plain outlines, all the rest of the cards you can buy come in one of 4 different colours, denoting the card's faction. The factions are the Blue Trade Federation, the Yellow Star Empire, the Red Machine Cult, and the Green Blobs. Factions are at the core of how you build a good deck in Star Realms, because if you play 2 or more cards of the same colour in a turn, you get not only their regular abilities, but also their bonus faction abilities. So if you build a deck with enough cards of the same faction, your deck will collectively become more powerful than the sum of its parts. At the end of your turn, any trade or combat that you didn't use is lost and doesn't carry over to your next turn, and the cards you've played and the cards you've bought go into a discard pile next to your deck. The exceptions to this are the horizontal bases, which stay out in front of you like a protective barrier until your opponent uses combat or an ability to destroy them. If your deck is ever empty and you need to draw a card, this discard pile is shuffled and becomes your new deck. Draw 5 cards, play your cards, buy new cards and put them in the discard pile, and that is 90% of how to play Star Realms. This near full rules explanation took just 2 minutes, and within a handful of turns of playing Star Realms you will know exactly how to play. But that simplicity doesn't mean that Star Realms lacks depth. So now let's get into what makes Star Realms good. First, let's go with the artistic details. Star Realms is great mechanically, but that's also backed up by having a strong sci-fi theme. Picking up cards in Star Realms feels like piecing together an enormous space armada, and the gorgeous art on the cards gives each ship and each faction a really strong sense of identity. Each faction has its own culture and style that comes across in both the visuals and the mechanics. The Star Empire is all about overwhelming your opponent with numbers, with most of their units having the ability to draw more cards or force your opponent to discard cards in order to give you an advantage. The Machine Cult are efficient machines, and they're the only faction that can scrap cards, which allows you to completely remove weak Scouts and Vipers from your deck. The Blobs don't even have ships, they're just giant, vicious space creatures that focus on stacking huge amounts of damage, while the Trade Federation are the only faction that can regain authority, giving them the feel of a powerful establishment whose mere presence gives them right to rule. It's not a huge amount of world building, but it gives Star Realms a strong platform to build off with its mechanics, and it's a sort of glue that ties the whole game together. Mechanically, what's so good about Star Realms is that it's a tactical and strategic game that keeps itself fluid and simple through randomness and a tight decision space. A decision space is the range of options that a player has at any given point during a game. In the classic game of Go, the decision space is enormous, making the game overwhelming for new players and very slow and thinky. But in Star Realms, your range of options is usually quite small. Just as an example, in an early turn I played a hand of cards and got 4 trade and 1 combat. With the combat I attacked my opponent, and with the trade I could buy a space station, a patrol mech, or a barter world. And that's it. My entire turn is a single decision of which card to pick up. That's quick, it's simple, but it's still an important decision. You still have to think about your choices. In that example, I went for the versatile patrol mech in the end because it gives you the option of taking 3 trade early in the game to build up my fleet, and then picking 5 combat in later turns when maybe I need more damage. But if it were a few turns later, and maybe I'd already picked up a couple of Trade Federation cards, then I might have gone for Barter World instead to increase the chance of triggering faction bonuses. Every decision you make in Star Realms has a knock-on effect. Every card you buy is going to keep cycling through your deck for the rest of the game, so you want to pick the right one. As you play, you'll develop some preferences. If I see a cheap red card on an early turn, I always go for it so I can try to scrap as many rubbish scouts and vipers as possible. Regardless of which faction I'm primarily aiming for, I'll usually try to pick up Recycling Station if I see it because I think it synergizes with any type of deck. Even when presented with the same choices, you might want to act differently depending on what's already happened in the game so far, and that's because of Star Realms' inherent randomness. A lot of Star Realms is about trying to buy the right cards, but it's not possible to know 100% what the right card is. You don't know what hand of cards you're going to draw, you don't know what's even going to appear in the trade row, and you don't know what your opponent is going to do. So while you do have to keep trying to make the right decision, you can't tediously calculate what that is. To some extent, you have to go with your inner Star Realms instincts. The randomness doesn't make Star Realms less strategic. If anything, it makes it more strategic. Instead of just running out a textbook play, you've got to think about what makes the most sense in the moment. Sure, in any individual game, you could find yourself going for blob ships, and then suddenly there's a multi-turn drought of green cards, while your opponent is finding everything they need. But you've got to work with what's in front of you, and getting the little things right will win you more games in the long run. And while getting those small decisions right will win you a lot of games, there are still occasions where you can make huge, game-changing plays. On this turn here, for example, I was down to just 11 health, and I thought, if I scrap my 2 beloved battle blobs for 4 extra combat each, does that give me a chance to win next turn? Because I'm probably not surviving longer than that. I did the maths, it did give me the chance, and ultimately I won that game on the bold call to scrap my 2 best cards. So Star Realms is still a tense tactical duel, but one where you won't suffer from analysis paralysis, and one that plays at speed. The randomness also makes all games of Star Realms different because you don't know what cards there are going to be, or how they're going to come out. It's also great for keeping you invested in games where you've fallen behind, and keeping games tense if you've pulled ahead, because a couple of good or bad turns either way, and the outcome of a match could look drastically different. The presence of those good turns also fills Star Realms with exciting highs and lows, like when you draw your massive 8-value Trade Federation command ship that draws 2 extra cards, and then draw the unique Machine Cult Stealth Needle that can replicate another ship, so you replicate the command ship and get to draw another 2 cards and also trigger both faction bonuses so you can destroy 2 bases, and you've dealt 10 damage and recover 8 authority, and you've still got 7 more cards in your hand, and it feels like that ProZD sketch with all the cows in it. And of course, while that's a lucky turn, when you bought that Stealth Needle, you were hoping to copy the best ship in your deck, and so to you it still feels like a good plan that came off. And if you're on the receiving end of a monster turn like that, you just go, damn, they got a good turn. And it's not frustrating because of how quickly Star Realms plays. If you lose, you just go again, knowing that the luck will even out, and if you're the better player, overall you'll win more games because, and this is crucial, all the decisions you make are about mitigating the randomness anyway. I think it's pretty clear by now that I am a huge fan of this game, and I have been for years now. I bought a physical copy of Star Realms in 2015, and then I bought the digital version because I didn't get to play it enough, and I have praise for both ways of playing. Having a physical copy is great for playing with friends and family because, like I said earlier, it's an incredibly easy game to teach. And because of the element of randomness, it's a game where new players can have fun against someone who's played a lot, in a way that they absolutely wouldn't in a game like chess. And while I get that this is a few months late now, if there's any reason that you can't leave the house very much, it's just a nice thing to have around. The digital version, however, has some advantages, many that you would expect from a digital version of a card game, like being able to play a game whenever you feel like it. Playing online, you can either play in real time, where you're given 45 to 60 seconds for a turn, and you can usually find a game within a minute or two. There's also an asynchronous mode, which is the one I use most frequently. It gives you 48 hours for a turn, and so I tend to stack up 10 or 15 games, and then when I want to play, I go on and take half a dozen turns across different matches and log off again. So it works as both a game to sit down and play, and a short time killer for a few minutes here and there. And you only have to buy the game once to play it on all your devices. If you don't want to wait a couple of minutes for a game, there's also a pretty strong AI to play against for quicker turns, and also some campaign missions. Some of these are pretty much just regular Star Realms games, but there are also achievements that give you fun goals to try to reach. There are only 2 sets of campaign missions in the base game, however, the rest of these come with Star Realms' many expansions. Star Realms has had a huge number of expansions since its successful release in 2013, adding new cards, new mechanics, new effects, ships with multiple factions. And having played the game for 5 years, I'll let you in on a little secret. I've not played with any of them. I've just never felt the need. All this praise has been earned by just the original set. I'm sure the expansions are fine, good even, but if I had them on the app, I'd probably want the same cards in real life, and then I'd lose the portability of this tiny little box. The base game that costs just £4.99 on Steam is just so good on its own. I can imagine wanting the expansions if I'd grown tired of a game and wanted more new stuff to keep it interesting, but I don't need that, because I've never grown tired of pasta with tomato sauce. That was a callback in case you skipped the beginning of the video and now think I'm an idiot. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video of me praising one of my favourite games. If you did, why not subscribe to this channel to see more videos about quality games? And if you're looking for something to watch right now, how about my video on SpaceChem, a genius puzzle game by legendary indie developer Zachtronics? Or for something a bit newer, how about a review of one of 2019's most explosive titles, Ape Out? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.